I woke up at 8:10 a.m. and I was not in my room. But that isn't the first thing that I focused on. I was more worried about the fact that I was awake before the 8:13 alarm. No one was supposed to be awake before the 8:13 alarm. And yet, here I was. And not only was I awake, but I was in a room that was not my own. I did not know how I got here. I also had no idea where I was in general. It was obviously a hotel room, but this wasn't the Point Pine Hotel. I sat up in the king-size bed and looked around at the dark red carpet and the thick golden curtains that covered the window, which took up most of the wall to my left. I was too scared to move until it was 8:13, thinking that this was some trap to find people who were breaking the rules. At 8:13, I heard the town alarm, only the sound was muffled, coming from outside and not inside the room, which was odd. I got out of bed and slipped my feet into slippers, slowly getting up and walking over to the window to pull the curtain back a few inches. I could see the town below me, the bakery, the high school, and the hospital a few blocks down. I realized I was pretty high up, but also, I realized that this building was right where Windsor Park used to be. The strange thing, however, was that Windsor Park was here yesterday, and I knew this because I passed it on my evening jog. So, how did an entire building appear within a few hours? And how did I end up in this building when I lived across town? A soft knock on my door distracted me for a second, and I walked across the room towards the door. "Yes?" I called. "Room service," a voice replied. I opened the door to see a person standing outside my door. It was difficult for me to tell their gender, and their shaved head made it a bit harder. They were wearing a simple black uniform and standing behind a cart that contained food and a French press. I didn't order this," I replied. "Courtesy of the hotel, non-dormant," they replied in a monotone voice. "Right, about that," I began as they pushed the cart into the room. "What is this place? How did it get here in Point Pine?" They didn't answer and simply uncovered the plates of food and walked back out. I stared at the food and eventually decided to grab a few berries off one of the plates, and then walked out into the hall to investigate the rest of the hotel while I ate the berries. They were incredibly sweet, and I felt like I was eating candy instead of fruit. As I closed the door, I saw the room number on the small golden plaque, 813. "Weird," I mumbled as I began walking down the hallway, noticing that the person from earlier had vanished entirely. I walked up to the elevator, which opened as I stepped in front of it, and stepped inside, pressing the button to the lobby. I stood silently inside the elevator, watching the floor numbers decrease as it went down. Finally, the elevator dinged and the doors opened. I stepped out into the lobby, which had a very simple, less lavish decor than the room did. There was a big wooden desk to the left of the elevator, but nobody behind it. I walked closer and saw a handwritten note on the desk. "Back in 8 minutes. Deciding that I didn't want to wait around, I made my way towards the hotel doors and pushed them open. I found that they were extremely heavy, and I had to lean on them and push them open using all of my body weight. The slippers that I wore weren't much help, and they slid across the floor of the lobby, and I managed to get the door open enough to slip outside. I stood on the sidewalk and looked around. There were a few people walking around already, and a gust of ice-cold wind hit me suddenly, making me jump and causing goosebumps to erupt all over my body. I crossed my arms across my chest, wishing that I had at least looked for a robe or something. "Looks like you need this." I turned to see the same person as before, standing to my left and holding out a black robe. I took it and put it on, tying it. When I looked up again, they were gone. Feeling somewhat unsettled, I began my walk into town, passing a few people who were out on a morning run. A chihuahua on a leash yapped at me as I passed by. I made my way to the Point Pine Cafe. There wasn't a line, which was out of the ordinary at this hour. As I walked up to the counter, I realized I didn't have any money on me. "Shit," I whispered.
Rough night?
I turned to see Edwin, one of the baristas, walking up behind me as he started to clean off a table. "What?"
You're in your pajamas, Bev.
"Right, yeah," I replied.
Are you okay?
"Yeah, I woke up in the hotel. I don't remember how I got there."
You walked here from Point Pine Hotel?
"No, not that hotel. The Hotel Non-Dormant."
The what?
I pointed in the direction of the hotel. "It's right down the street where Windsor Park used to be." He stared at me for a few minutes before walking outside the cafe and looking down the street in the direction of the hotel. I watched him stare for a while before turning back and coming inside. Another gust of wind made it to the cafe and I shivered.
When the hell did that get there?
I shrugged. "When did what get where?" Another worker that I'm not familiar with came out of the kitchen. "The hotel down the street. The Hotel Non-Dormant. That's always been there," she replied. "No, it hasn't," I said. "Of course it has. It's been there since I've been here, and I was born and raised in Point Pine."
Well, so are Bev and I, and we remember Windsor Park being there.
"Why would we have a place called Windsor Park? Everything is named after the town of Point Pine." "The hotel isn't," I said. She said nothing. The door to the cafe opened again, and we all jumped as another cold gust of wind pushed its way inside. We all turned to see who had walked in, and I saw a man that I didn't recognize. He was dressed in an expensive-looking suit, but his hair and beard looked unkempt. "Hi, welcome to the Point Pine Cafe," the girl greeted him. Edwin and I looked at each other.
Are you new? No.
"Where did you come from then?" I asked.
The hotel down the street. Now, can you move? I need some coffee.
Edwin stepped out of the way and looked like he was about to say something else. Only he was interrupted by some shouting that was coming from outside. I followed him as he walked towards the door and pulled it open. As we stepped out, I noticed just how cold it was. I was shivering uncontrollably, and I already couldn't feel my nose, lips, fingers, or toes. I wrapped my arms around myself for warmth and watched as two men pushed each other around on the sidewalk. A crowd was beginning to form. Edwin walked in between the men and placed one hand on each man's chest, trying to stop the fight from escalating. They towered over him comically, but neither attempted moving.
What is going on?
Edwin asked.
He's pulling some kind of prank on me, making me think I'm crazy.
The man on the left replied. He was bigger than the other man and dressed in workout clothes.
It's not a prank. He thinks the hotel just showed up today for some stupid reason. I know it's been there this whole time.
Edwin looked over at me, and then we both looked down the street. There was a crowd starting to form outside the hotel, and it looked like even more people were beginning to argue and fight with each other. I jogged down the street as the cold wind blew in my face, feeling like thousands of needles were being pressed into my face. I reached the crowd of people in front of the hotel and tried to catch my breath as I watched a woman grab her baby's bottle, unscrew it, and then pour the contents over another woman who screamed. I noticed a guy named Jeffrey who was running towards an older man. When he reached him, he tackled him to the ground and the two fell right in front of me. I tried to move out of the way, but tripped over them and fell. I felt my head bounce off the concrete before everything went black. When I woke up, I was back in the hotel room. There was something cold on my head, which I realized was an ice pack, and the same room service worker from earlier was standing near my bed. Or was it the same worker? I couldn't exactly remember, but they did sure look familiar. Still, there was something off about them. "What happened?" I asked, trying to sit up. "Oh, you should be careful. You hit your head pretty hard." I'd managed to sit up all the way and noticed that the curtains had been pulled back completely, giving me a full view of the town below me. It was absolute chaos. It looked like the setting of a post-apocalyptic movie down there. People were running around like lunatics. Some were still fighting and others simply watched. "How did the hotel get here?" I asked, not looking away from the window. "That depends on who you ask. the worker responded. I'm asking you. There was a period of silence, and I had to look to make sure they hadn't left. The hotel wasn't always here, right? So when did it get here? I asked. Well, that's a little hard to remember, isn't it? What? The worker began to walk towards the door, evading my questions. Enjoy your stay at the hotel non-dormant. I suggest you stay inside. You're much safer in here. I turned back to the window as the door to my hotel room closed. Below me, the town continued to tear itself apart.